What's going on, guys? Kiger here. In today's video, we're going to talk about Cannoneer. We're going to talk about what they can do, what builds to use, skill combinations, strategy. Let's get into it. Alright, class advancements, generally, as I've said in the other videos, you want to focus one T4, do the other T4, then either check the two T5s, decide if there's one that you particularly want. If not, then go for T4s on your other class. Generally, this is the best option, and then come back to do the T5s. Over here, very similar to the Ranger, these T4s are very good for their particular class. So armor up here, attack and crit damage. They're all about their crit rate, crit damage. So getting more attack, so you do more percentages on top of flat number. This is the way to go, and that's kind of what the class wants to do. Over here for mechanician, ignore block and defense. So defense actually turns into damage for them with how their third skill works, as well as their kind of a brawlery mid-range fighter. So taking more hits with the defense and dealing more damage with the ignore block are very good here, especially seeing as with the third skill, the more damage you deal, the more you heal, so ignoring the block is very beneficial. Now, checking out the T5s, we have HP and crit, obviously really good, and attack and block. These are both kind of mixed. I think these generally, as I just said, follow their role. So if you're doing armor, do the armor T5 first. If you're doing mech, do the mech T5 first. Now let's check out the abilities. Alright, so armor loadout right here. Generally do it in this particular order. In things like Top League, you can charge your preparation early, doing the first two skills, so you get your skills up and ready, and then once you start the fight in things like Top League, you can hit them with the grenade, the third skill, which will then slow them, and then set up for the nether fire. Generally, nether fire, you want to wait a little bit before you use it, because you want your opponent to have their chance to either maneuver and already use a dodge, already use a movement skill, so you can kind of get them in that cone, or have someone on your team CC them so you hit them with the full thing. Now, what's important here is two very, very important things when we talk about nether fire. One, it gives you the shield / immunity to knock up and knockback. The shield is important if you're doing something like Earth Echo, which I don't suggest you do, but there's a cool thing you can do here with something like Foxglove as a passive, because if you have shield, you get crit rate. Now, obviously, I don't believe you will need that for this, but if you don't have the Fire Echo, this is a decent one to fall back on for these synergies as we talk about. Now, Blasting Sparkle, the first skill right here, reduces their healing and gives you movement speed. You want to be using this all the time. Just reapply, reapply, reapply. The second skill is actually the one that you can change. It's here just to have the preparation more often, but what's actually a pretty decent one is Blazing Fire right here, which is the cannon, which reduces the enemy's attack power. Now, this is just an extra thing, doing more damage. It's obviously very bad if they have multiple gladiators that can use this to heal off of. But besides that, it's pretty good just to set it and forget it and focus particularly on Blasting Sparkle as much as possible, Grenade, and Nether Fire. Now talking about over here on Mechanician. Alright, so these are the 4 base skills for Mechanician. First skill, kind of a pretty big cone and does a slight knockback against players specifically. So this is a pretty good stay away from me button. Then we have the cannon that we just talked about. Very bad against gladiators, slightly bad against lancers. And our third skill does the AoE around us. Very good range on it, that it hits everyone in that range, as well as increasing your defense by 20%. Pretty big number. This can be very powerful because it stays on you for things like if you want to do this and something like Berserker, for example. You put this on, you get the 20% defense buff, you swap to Berserker, then you minus your defense to plus your attack, and this does work like that. The fourth skill is what's commonly referred to as spiders. Puts down the spiders. They slow the enemy. The whole kind of thing here is a mid-range kind of controller. You're keeping people off of you and your team, doing the pushback, lowering their attack, slowing them down, and that's kind of what you're doing. You're kind of and your damage is actually pretty okay. It's just the downside is you're giving them multiple targets if they have a good amount of HP steal rate to go off of. Now, what you can also do here is that first skill that does the cone. Very powerful for that knockback, but its cooldown is atrocious. Now, what we can do here is take Blasting Sparkle and put it on there. Now, it requires the level 5 preparation to get the reducing healing and speed up, but which you would imagine is entirely based off of armor, but you can get that off of Mechanician as well. This will just be slow in the first little bit, stacking up your preparation. These are the 2 main ways that we use it. Now let's talk about fairies and echoes, then we'll talk about skill rotations and what classes go with them. Alright, same caveat as all of them. Holy is the best for PvP, as long as you have at least a level 5 echo and they are in the red stars at least. Generally, I like them to be 3 red to get full stats, as well as unlock most of their extra effects on their skills. Now, as you'll see, I have one right there that is not red. It is technically bad, but I felt that their stats, as well as going from level 6 to level 7, was beneficial enough for me to do this. I only recommend doing this for 1 holy fairy that you have 2 weak. Now, as far as the elementals, this is a pretty straightforward one. For armor, straight up fire. There is no real other option that is nearly as good. For Mechanician, this is a pretty interesting one. Earth is the one that most goes point to point with it. Getting defense, so that defense boost is even better, as well as just flat damage, which is good for your summons. It's not just your damage, it's all damage, so it also increases the damage of your summons. It's very good like that. Another interesting choice, I believe Earth to be best here, but if you want something a bit off meta, Wind is pretty decent here as well, giving you a huge cooldown to spiders and the blood circle. That's pretty good. It also gives a flat damage bonus, which is obviously good for your summons. and is just more generally towards that style. Now, talking about their will cores and generations, for armor, you're going to build it almost exactly like Marksman. You're going to want Slaughter, and if you want to survive one hit, then go with Rigidity, as well as 4 Break Free. If you want to go towards Mechanician, where you're kind of more brawlery, this is a little bit more interesting. I still recommend Slaughter here, but I do believe you can do more interesting things like Nightmare. Sorry, not Nightmare. The one over here. What's the name? Soul Hunt. Because you're with both of your summons, apply a debuff, and so deceleration, and your spiders give them a slow, so you'll kind of always have this extra damage going on, which is pretty interesting. As far as the cores, Slaughter and God Bless instead of Rigidity, because you put out a summon. The summon is always going to be in combat, which gives you time to stack it up. You're innately kind of squishy. You are kind of brawlery, but once it fully stacks up to 10, you can be a little bit more liberal, especially during your blood restraint windows. Now let's go over to showing you the combos and talk about what classes go with them. Alright, armor, this is the basic setup and what I suggest going with. If I summon it, just to show you, if you look above my head, I press the first skill. You see I have that yellow bar under my green bar right there. That is the preparation. If I click it again, well, now it goes after the target, but that's at 2 and 3. The only one that does more than 1 is Netherfire, which is 2. So what's interesting here is you can be in a situation where you have 3 prepped, and then come in Netherfire, and then you go into Overheat, which will then give you the bonuses. Now, what you want to do here is once you go into combat, as I said before, throw the grenade, get into a good position. You can click and hold to aim the Netherfire so you don't mess it up. A lot of people are just going to click the button, which will make you cast it from here or from here. Really, it depends on what it wants to do at that time. But we gotta wait for the cooldown. But what you want to do is you want to be at mid-range with it, because it's a lot harder for them to get away. I said this as well for Rimru's Gluttony, King of Gluttony ability, where you want to aim the cone. So for example, you may think right here is the best spot to shoot it, because if they go left or right, then they have to go the furthest. If they try to dodge through me, a dodge will not get them all the way through. Really, right about here, somewhere around the middle is the sweet spot, but you actually want to be a little more towards them. So more like there is the sweet spot here. And the reason why it's here and not dead in the middle, if you do it dead in the middle, if they do a dodge towards you, that takes them out of the range entirely. Right here, the only spot they can go to not get hit with a dodge is away from you. And that's the thing that you want. Because if you click this button and put yourself in the animation and they dodge towards you and get out of this, they could just click skills on you and you kind of have to sit there until the animation is done. Whereas if you make them dodge backwards and away from you, you don't have to burn a dodge to get ready for the next onslaught. Right here, as you can see, I cannot move. Now, as far as Blasting Sparkle, as I said, you'll want to use this as much as possible. Your mid-range user, your basics also hurt. So you kind of want to treat this like an AD carry from League of Legends. As you're moving around, if you don't have any cooldowns or weave in between cooldowns, always try to get an auto in there. As far as Flamey Cannon, this is an interesting one because you cannot lock the target as I would love to, but you can get used to the range and distance of this. So for example, if I turn it like this, pay attention to, I could turn it like this. Pay attention to this part right here. As you can see, goes a little bit past that. So you can kind of control the range and where you're going for. And it's going to go based off of where your character is facing, so be careful with that. As I said, you can also do the turret and do it that way if you don't want to deal with Flaming Cannon, because it does have a long cooldown. I cannot move during that. Now if we change over to Mechanician, bam, 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 bam. Now this is a class you really don't want to auto unless it's PvE, because in PvP, well, most PvP you have to do on manual, but on auto it wants to summon the summons. Instead of in range for them to attack the enemy, they want to run up next to the enemy and drop them, which, I mean, kind of makes some sense. It's like harder for them to get away from the summons, but it puts you in harm's way. Doesn't work for me. So as we do right here, bam, do a basic so it knows what to go after. And as you can see, you want to get used to the turret's range. It's actually a little bit further than that. It could be at the edge of this yellow line and still hit them. And the spiders, they can actually be slightly random of where they get summoned, but they are always around you and generally towards the way you're facing. There's 4 of them. This is their attack range. And then whenever the timer's up or if they get killed, they blow up and deal damage. Now, what I want you to do when you're going into combat is kind of decide where you want the fight to happen. So if I want the fight to happen right in the middle where the dummy is right there, I would summon the turret here, let the turret go after him, pepper in a couple autos whenever I feel like it, and then I'm kind of trying to push them towards that corner. So I could do something like, as you can see, that massive range, get a push in, boom. It doesn't work against this because it considers this a monster, but you're kind of working them into that corner. You can either use this offensively to get them into that corner where you want them, or you can use it defensively to get them off of you. So the idea here is cannon, basic attack, decide based off of what they're doing. If they're coming in at you, push them away, and then set up the spiders. And then whenever they do end up coming at you, or if they're trying to AoE down your guys, blood restraint, look at that range, and then just lets you go to town on them. Now it's a pretty much entirely PvE fairy, Carnation, but what's very interesting about her is if you have a higher level Earth Echo, you get the erosion, right? Now, it goes based off of tick, which is very interesting in how this game works. Now, her circle that she puts down is relatively the same size as blood restraint. So, and it also, on each of your tick, you will be giving them erosion, which is a poison effect on them. So you can put down Carnation and blood restraint, and their health bar is just going down. You can also just have Earth Echo and not really worry about Carnation specifically, have a high enough level, and then blood restraint as make sure you're in the middle of a couple of people, and they'll get those erosion stacks over time. That's why I suggested God Bless instead of Rigidity. You want a longer fight. And you, even with the summons, do your basic attacks, that's giving them damage for that erosion. As well as, get that knockback. Boom. And then take advantage of your range. That's what a lot of people have trouble with. They're just like, well, I use my abilities, I'm going to run. Your basic attacks deal a decent amount of damage here, as well as will trigger those erosion stacks. As far as classes to go with them, really, Scholar works pretty hand in hand with Cannon, either direction. So you can do something like Armor as your offensive class and Priest as your defensive class. On that same team, and then that's going to do great, right? Give yourself that crit buff, swap to armor, go to town. You can do the same in the opposite direction over here on Mechanician. Use Judge as your offensive class, and then use Mech as your defensive class. Spend most of your time over in Judge, and then do your setup and stuff over here to kind of set up the battlefield, which is something that Judge also likes to do with Mechanician. Other choices for armor, on paper, it seems like one of the bows, one of the ranger subclasses would do really well with it, but the trouble here is both of them you want to be in as long as possible. The only one I could see is Windchaser to get that third dodge, as well as give you a cleanse and group PvP content would be very beneficial to have. Over here on Mechanician, something like Gladiator could be pretty decent because you're already in the mix. One of the Lancers can be okay, but I'm kind of wary of that. But also Windchaser is a pretty decent one as well, doing that same kind of mid-range control style. If you want to check out any of their ones, I did them earlier in the week, check on the channel. Let me know what you think down below. Till next time, guys.